I'm Cynthia Marks, and I head up the Holistic Psychoanalysis Foundation established by my late husband, Dr. Bernard Bale. Welcome to And Now Love. Dr. Loren Weiner is back with us today. Loren is a psychotherapist here in Los Angeles. Her busy practice is steeped in Dr. Bale's methodology, and therefore, the dreams of her patients are precious tools that she uses to bring to light what is held in the unconscious. Today, we are discussing how we are living out our parents' lives and not our own. Loren's brought some dreams that truly represent this dynamic, and we may just see something familiar in ourselves. So, thank you, Loren.
Thank you for having me again.
Of course, and
Good
I'm
to be
so
back.
curious. So tell us how you want to start this.
Well, I think that was a great intro, that we are not living our own lives, actually. Now, that may sound unbelievable to a lot of people because they're going about their day and living their lives.
Yes.
When you start to dig deeper, listening to dreams, and really just listening to the way people talk about their daily lives, interactions, relationships, work with children, romantic, you will start to hear the way they describe certain things, their own reactions, their own feelings. And often, if you're lucky enough to know something about the person's parents, you will hear where it is very similar or often exactly the same in certain areas. And so it's just a little clue, and then you know to be listening for that, and you know to ask about it, and you can start to help the person look at themselves that way. One of the things my patients are probably very used to me asking is, where did you learn to do it that way? Where did you get that idea? Somebody may come in and tell me about a problem. I had this interaction with my boss or with my best friend, and I said this. Okay. Now, most of the time, if it goes well, the person isn't reporting it to me so much. It's normally the areas where it was tricky, where it got difficult.
Sure.
And a lot of times I'll hear it if I know enough about the person's history. Even if I don't, I will usually be curious and say, well, what made you respond that way? So basically, the big idea is, how do we get to be ourselves? How do we develop? And one of the ways we develop is we take parts of our main caretakers and other people, and we pull parts of them into ourselves. Now, this is a well-known idea in psychoanalysis. It's called identification. And it's part of a normal path of development. So I live with you. I'm going to take in unconsciously parts of your ideas, your morals, your beliefs, your personality. And this is how I learned to become eventually an adult human.
And is this happening because this is really only our main source of information, our main
Yes.
source of figuring out how to have our feelings or not have our feelings?
Yes, truly all of it. And this is happening unconsciously. So little kids aren't sitting there sort of studying you. This is happening by being in proximity to you. And this is happening just with regular contact. But there is always an unconscious piece. We have an unconscious. It is always working. So that means there's a part of us that is unknown to us, and it is taking in everything from everybody. Mm-hmm. But our caretakers are our most important people, so it makes sense that that's how we build our personalities.
And this is already happening in utero.
This is already happening in utero. And this is, Dr. Bale saw that in dreams of his patients, that he could see that this was going all the way back. Generally, psychoanalysis talks about this post-birth. Mm-hmm. That, this is happening as children grow up. So they have a self, and they are pulling in, building that self and adding to it by pulling in all of the people around them. Bale thought that in a much larger way, we actually receive an imprint, perhaps in utero, perhaps right after. And that, as we've talked about, but I'll go over it again, is something that you receive and take in that sets the limitations for your life. So I'm going to differentiate that from regular identification, which you're going to pull in things, but the idea there isn't so much that it's going to limit your life. In fact, it is helping build your life, and we want that sort of development. But an imprint is much larger. This is sort of the piece that sits under all of that we take in. We get this from our mothers. That's the start. We also get one from our fathers later, but we get it from our mothers, and it is all of her unconscious, unprocessed, negative feelings she has about herself. So your mother is living her life, all of the places where she doesn't feel loved enough, supported enough, where she maybe wasn't given credit, seen enough, allowed to have her feelings in whatever way you can imagine an adult person going through the world and a woman going through the world is going to encounter things and store it. So this goes all the way back to the beginning of her life too. Whatever she took from her mother and then whatever she gathered from living her life goes in. And wherever it's not been understood and processed and healed, it sits. And that is what our babies come in contact with. And the mother gives that because it is like there is another place now opening up. She gives this, and the baby has to take it because a baby's main job is to survive. And the best way to survive is to make sure your mother survives. So what do you want to do? You want to relieve her of all of these things that might do her in.
And this is a fantasy because you cannot possibly do that.
That's right. This is both a fantasy and all unconscious. This isn't a little fetus sitting in the womb saying, oh, I better do this. This is like energetic and all feeling. Mm-hmm. And this is the exchange.
And I think it's good that you keep explaining that to us because we're human. We're just so literal. It's hard to think of something happening inside of us that is unbeknownst to us. But that is happening, and our dreams show us that. So I like that we kind of keep coming back to that.
You have to sort of get this idea that we have an entire world called the unconscious that is always active, always recording everything we do in our lives, everything we feel. And each and every one of us has one. And so we think we're just having conversation when we talk to people. Hi, how are you? Well, nice to see you again, whatever the simple conversation is. And really, there is also a below the surface exchange of feeling.
And this has been known in the world of psychoanalysis for quite some time.
Yes. Go all the way back to Freud.
Yes.
So this exchange that we are having and that the mother has with the baby, now it does something really important that a standard way of just identifying with somebody, learning to build your personality by coming in contact with your parents, doesn't do. It sets limitations. And this is the reason it's so important. Bale saw that what was happening is people would get these very early, very simple messages coming from the mother's ball of trouble that she has now given to this child, and the child is taken. But it's a ball of trouble. So it's going to have all these feelings mom went through, right? Maybe, and it has simple messages. I'm not lovable. I'm not going to be successful. I won't get what I want. I'll never be happy. Maybe I'll feel I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm not really supposed to live a life.
And I'm not to have a voice.
All of these, right? All of these things. And perhaps it's limitless, because it depends on the person's experience. But that goes to a baby at the start.
That's an imprint.
And that's an imprint.
And do we consider the imprint to be basically the negative things that we're given to deal with? The imprint also contains the positive, or if it's positive, it's outside of this imprint?
Good question. And truthfully, I think Bill went back and forth on this. I think by the end of his life, what he decided was we do get positive things. those don't give us the trouble. In fact, those ameliorate.
Right. We don't really have to talk about those so
Well,
much.
it's nice to talk about when you're trying to help combat, right? Find the places to fight the negative.
I see.
But really, the negative piece is what limits us, right? Everything else sort of works to help you grow, help you build, and get to whatever you desire. The negative limits.
So let's say there is some really helpful, delightful thing that one was given by their mother, let's say in terms of an imprint. And then there's another thing that is hollowed out or scary or whatever it might be. Can you take that positive thing and say, look, you were given this thing. Can we use that to help with this? Or I guess it just depends on the individual situation.
It depends on the person. That may happen naturally, right? That there may be, the person's going to have a certain amount of resilience or drive to push through difficult things because there were positive things that also came in, perhaps both hopefully consciously and unconsciously. The more, the better. But what you're stuck with is all the negative. And that's really what we're looking at is what's the limitation? It's there unconsciously. And what do we start to do about it? And wherever that piece you took in that sets the limits on how your life is going to go, how happy you can be, how loved you can feel, how successful you can be, how easy life can feel to you, how you can meet your goals or not, whatever the issue is, and you may have many. Sometimes it's one big one, but you're probably going to find several. But they're simple ideas. They're just like this. Oh, I'm not to have love. Oh, I'm not to be successful. So wherever we find those, we are going to take anything positive in your life that helps lift you up so that you can fight that.
I see.
I don't think it alone is going to get rid of it sort of without any of us knowing. These imprints are tenacious, and they take work to get at them. We protect them. We don't want them known. Once that ball is taken in, it becomes part of us. We do not know there is any difference. I just feel that is me. I am just not lucky in life. That's me.
But prior to receiving this imprint, you are who you are. And then we add these other things on top of that.
Yes.
And we lose sight of that we are who we are.
Yes. So if you think of yourself as a ball and you take in another ball. Now, if your mother had a lot of problems and life was hard, that ball may be pretty big. It may eclipse most of the ball that was you. If you're lucky, it wasn't that tough. Maybe we get a smaller ball. So you get to stay more of you. Right? Now, some people are going to argue, all right, it depends what your soul chose. How big a task, how big a struggle did the soul want in this lifetime? Well, that's a way to think about this. So we chose to come in and have certain challenges. So this imprint is going to give you your challenges. So I say lucky, not lucky, really, it's what did you choose? And how much does your soul want to learn and evolve and try to work in this particular lifetime? Now, when you take in this ball, you're taking in another person. So as I said, if it eclipses a lot of you, whoever you were before an imprint, whoever your soul was, we were coming in, we're going to lose a lot of you. And what you may end up doing is being, in fact, because you have now taken in another person's problems, you're going to end up being more like that person. If it takes up too much space, you are more like that person than yourself because that little bit of you left is much smaller than what you took in. Now, we are all taking in something. Everybody has an imprint. That doesn't matter whether you're a billionaire or a pauper. You have an imprint.
Mm-hmm. You were born.
You were born. You came through another human being and you were born. And so this happens.
So it's almost like the weight of that imprint is weightier than the weight of you. And you then have to spend so much of your effort dealing with that
Pushing
weight.
it out. That's right. Yes, dealing with the weight. And that changes how your life goes. If you didn't have that weight, life might go like this, but you have it. Now it's going like this. It changes the trajectory.
The idea of us before our imprint is that we all are basically lovable, able to love. That's what we are before the imprint. And because of the imprint, we learn about each other and express ourselves maybe in ways that aren't so lovable, or we don't think we're lovable, but we're not born unlovable.
Right. We're not born unlovable. So, yes, we will then act out, make happen in a multitude of ways, all of these feelings that were given to us. Now, when you have an identification and a normal line of development, even if one is using identification in a defensive way, like when someone identifies with the aggressor, even with all of those, there is sort of an idea there that you are taking pieces as though that whole of you is there and you're adding to it. You may change, but that comes much later. With an imprint, it is at the beginning. And that's really what makes this so tricky, because it gets laid down so early. We don't know it's there. It dissolves into us. There is no outline, that we feel. And so, we're going to live all of that out as though it's us. And then I'm going to treat you a certain way. I'm not myself, and I'm carrying all of this. And I'm going to then go through the world with all of these ideas about myself and perhaps about other people based on them. Now, we've got this all laid down unconsciously very early. It limits who you're going to be because you have now had to take in somebody else's ideas about their own life, limitations, negative feelings. All of this doesn't let you be as much yourself. You are now carrying somebody else's personality at your base. So what does that look like? Well, you have to be sort of looking for it, because regular identification, where I take in a healthy way parts of other people and they dissolve into me, and there also is no outline, no separation, looks a certain way. And you might sound like your parents, you may vote the same way they did, you may do a lot of things just from living in proximity.
Yes,
right?
Go to the same church.
That's right. And we see that a lot even, later in life. People will change their values depending on the group they join. Sometimes that doesn't dissolve into you. You realize you are taking in other ideas. So we've got some difference there. But in a regular identification, it unconsciously happens. We're not aware of it. We just we think, okay, this is us. And that's fine and healthy. We want that to happen. We need it to happen.
But there are times where someone might unconsciously feel they're less lovable than most people. And they could look around and just assume because they are less lovable, that makes everyone else more lovable. And just think, well, that's my lot in life.
Right. And a lot of those, though that may come from an identification with one or both of your parents or other people in the family, a lot of times that is an early imprint issue. These sort of fundamental things we think about ourselves or think are wrong with ourselves. I'm not that type of person. I'm not the person that is popular. Your ears perk up when you're seeing people and you're listening, thinking, all right, we may have something that is more foundational, more aligned with an imprint. A lot of times we're looking to see where a person may live out a life that is similar to one of the caregivers, to one of your parents. People can start listening for this and looking for it in their own lives, And I think that's a really important piece here. It will be in the dreams. It is known in the unconscious. It may be defended against in the unconscious, that we don't want to know everything. We may deny a lot of it, but the dreams will show these ideas, and they'll usually try to point to where it is happening. And when we make the unconscious conscious, so I take something that you didn't know about or didn't understand the full depth of, then we start to make it conscious. oh, I now start to get a new idea and a new way to think about myself. And maybe I can start to think about this, that this didn't start out being me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I didn't start out, as you said, unlovable. Maybe that was something that I took on to try to save my mother and help her feel better and keep myself alive. Maybe that isn't fundamentally me. And one of the things we can start, as I will ask patients, well, where did you learn to do that? How did you learn to talk to people that way? Where did you learn to feel that way about yourself? How did you come by that idea? And I want people to start thinking about, where did I get that? Is that part of the family? Is that how people do it? How did you come to it?
That's not a question we typically ask ourselves.
We don't think, and also we don't think about those things when they just feel true about us, right? What do you mean, did I get it? It was just me.
I've always worn this.
Right, but maybe not. I wanted to talk about a patient today because it gives you some idea. This is a middle-aged woman who came to see me because she just was feeling dissatisfied in life, but not just sort of lightly dissatisfied, upset about a lot of areas of her life. But one of the ones that stuck out was just there was always trouble in interpersonal relationships. They would last for a while, then they'd break up, things would go wrong in the family. There was always a big upheaval. People were not treating her well. Felt she was just always unfairly characterized as difficult, hard to get along with. And she was upset by that, felt it was, unfair, but also did always get into trouble with people and didn't know how to stop that.
All sorts of relationships.
All sorts. With her own children, with her family members, with good friends. I mean, there was always something going wrong.
So did she come to you because she wanted to look at herself? What about me is
right, I'm the common
this
denominator.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
She did, luckily, because
That's
I think
brave.
It was brave. I think she's built more that way. And the other thing is she was really lucky and had some good people in her life who said to her, you're making trouble where there isn't any. And she was able to hear that and took it in. And these are people that really did love her. So she was lucky that even with all of this upheaval, she did have some people. Now, that doesn't mean she didn't argue with them a bit and, feel it was unfair, and she was hurt by that initially. And it took a while to digest that, but she did. So yes, already we have a certain person who is willing to take information in, allowed, and really was allowed to take good friends loving her in. That's important. Now she comes in and I hear, the ideas about this and what her main complaint is, and get a sense of what does she want to do in therapy. Where are we going? What's her idea of it? Because I want to know what is somebody expecting? Is it something I can even help the person with?
Yeah.
And so she tells me more and more of her history. And one of the things I start hearing about is how her mother interacted with all of her family members. Didn't have a lot of friends. That was tougher. The father was more social, the mother was not. But the mother had a large family and sort of stayed within the family. And you're probably going to guess, fought with all of them. My patient was so used to that. It never crossed her mind to think like, oh, am I doing this just like mom? I said, oh, but that sounds exactly like the way your mother did it. Oh. Like I knew my mom was difficult. I knew my mom this, but she didn't realize how much she was living out her mother's way of doing it all. Basically, in this arena, living out her mother's life.
Was she aware of this in that not everyone dealt with each other in this sort of confrontational way?
I think that was something she actually did have to learn. She knew she had people in her life that didn't, but really she had grown up in a family where confrontation was more the norm than not. So, no, she had a different idea going out into the world from the family culture. That family just, there was a lot of upheaval, a lot of getting in arguments, but her mother really did it in her own way. Her mother had her own flavor. And the patient started to see that she had the same flavor. And that's a critical piece. And that's a piece where I think people can start to look at themselves at home. If you're listening to this, you can start to think, all right, what are the things that give me trouble? What is it most people have something. What is it in my life? Where do I not feel fully satisfied? All right, well, what are my feelings about it? And do I feel, if something doesn't go right, do I feel, oh, of course, because it's my fault? Do I feel I was unfairly treated? And what you can do is see what that feeling is. How do you conceptualize it? And then who'd you get it from? Where does it come from? Is there anybody in the family you think does it that way? Did you do it like them? And I think that's a really important thing. Now, you may just find a lot of identifications, fair enough. And you might, though, find things that feel bigger than just that feel like they determined the way you're going to have your relationships, live your life, how successful you're going to be. Again, all of these imprint-like pieces. How loved am I going to feel? Did my mom feel loved? You have to ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are big questions, right? We start looking at the people around us like, oh, wait a minute. What was it that made my mother argue with everybody, even when she was completely wrong? But what was it that originally made her so upset, made her so angry? Maybe her mother just did it that way. That we will see a lot. Yeah. But people are often also angry because they're like, oh, I had to do it just like my mother. And they're not aware of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not aware that they're reliving someone's life and that they're upset about that unconsciously, because all of this is happening unconsciously.
So the question you ask about yourself that you then discover is coming from your mother, you then have to ask about your mother's experience, maybe in your own being. So why was my mother reacting like this? And see if you can take it back further or figure out this is because of XYZ that occurred in her life. Some of us don't have access to knowing those things.
Right. As much as you can.
Yeah.
If you can't, you can't. But if you can, yeah, it's really interesting to think about it that way. Okay, what shaped her? Where was she? Where did she feel it didn't go right? Where did her wishes not come true? Where did she feel she had no power? Where did she feel she got stuck in a life she didn't want? Lots of things, right? And because we're talking about women, because that's where the babies start, this is the first person they're coming in contact with. We've got all of the things we know about how women are treated in the world. And all the women are carrying that. Just consider that, because that may add, I'm never going to get what I want. I can't be successful. I'll never feel lovable, strong, empowered in my own life. These are the sorts of things we're carrying around that we don't know. But then, as you said, we're going to make decisions based on that. If I'm not lovable, I might take the first proposal that comes my way.
Yes.
It might be good for me. It might not. But I may not question that because I'm just so grateful somebody wanted me.
Yes.
Maybe I don't push myself to go try to get into a certain class or a group or take a certain job because I'm not a smart one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The other people are all smart. I'm not. Deep down, I know this about myself. So what would I set myself up for failure? No way. So I don't try.
And even in relationships, that person over there I'd really like to be friends with, but they're so much smarter than me. I'm not going to be of any interest to them.
That's right. Well, they're the popular group.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not. I'm over here. I'm lucky if I get one friend. Now, you may not be thinking this consciously, but it's sitting there in your unconscious, and it is making all of these decisions for you. And that's why an imprint is so problematic. Identifications don't tend to give us that global problem for our life, but an imprint does. And so while you take them both in unconsciously and you don't know they're there, an imprint causes a much bigger change in direction in how your life is going to go from the start. It lays down the whole rule book. from the start. And that's why it's so problematic. And that's why we want to be getting at it in any way, shape, or form that we can. So yeah, start asking these questions, and you're probably going to get answers that are top layer identifications. Oh yeah, I lived in my parents' home and they fought, and so I learned to fight with my partner, and that's probably an identification. Now, if we start to see that you fought exactly the way your mother did, and you even used her words, and you set things up like however she did it, to maybe somebody would say, oh, she was always felt she was in the right and my father was always wrong. And now I feel exactly like that about my partner, right? Okay. Then we start thinking, this may be more global than just you growing up in the home. And I start looking, we have to then go to the dreams. And my patient was nice enough to let us look at some of the dreams that when you're getting these, when someone's in your office and you're getting them and you go, oh, okay, I see what happened. All right, this gives me some of the lay of the land. And now when the patient can learn this and see, oh, I really am not being myself. Wow, great. Because now we can work on diminishing this imprint and getting more of you in the picture.
Is this identifying, let's say, with a mother? Let's say your mom, like your patient, always wants to be in conflict. She's looking for a reason to be in conflict. Let's say that part of her style is that she gets super frustrated and leaves the room and won't talk to anyone for 3 hours. Is that an identification with that person? If I'm doing the same thing in the same way, I want to create conflict, and then I also literally do the same thing, like slam the door and walk out the same way that my mom would.
Depends. And I say that probably on the surface in a certain way. At first glance, they're going to look the same. I can't tell you whether that's just an identification or an imprint, but I'm going to dig a little more, and I'm going to see, how does this happen? How much of mom do we have in the picture?
And understanding the part that is an identification gets you to the deeper part that is the imprint?
Yes, because it's all in the unconscious. So even an identification is unknown to the person. You don't know. You just go, oh, well, yeah, this is just the way we do it. It's kind of like going, yeah, every Sunday night we order pizza. It's what we've always done. What we're doing when we look at dreams, and whenever you're having conversation with a patient, you're always listening for the unconscious communications anyway, right? So we may look different. He may be depressed and solemn, and I may have this bubbly personality, but we may be working on the same idea or working with the same basic idea. You cannot get ahead in life. So if we start seeing something more thematic like that, and I know Dad has that, I am thinking more imprint. I'm going to at least investigate that, absolutely.
When I was growing up, my mom was very timid. She didn't have much of a voice. Often when it came to her children, she wouldn't speak up on our behalf. And as a kid, I started to notice that, wait a minute. This doesn't feel right, what's happening to my brother or me. And I was too afraid to speak up. I was just a little kid. And I would look at her and think, you're my mom. Why aren't you being a mom for me? As an adult, I knew that, but I didn't see that I didn't have a voice. I feel like I operated for a good part of my life, always thinking I'm going to stand back. Nobody wants to hear from me. I don't have as important a thing to say as everybody else in the room. Through the course of talking about my dreams, it became clear to me that I was that thing without a voice.
Yeah. Well, you were being mom.
Yeah.
Right. And then we're looking to see, how deep does that go?
Yeah. Even though I recognized as a kid that my mom was doing that, and I didn't see myself doing that.
Exactly. I should speak up. Mom was timid. Therefore, I should speak up. I didn't like it. We think, I don't have anything of value to say. Yes. I am not the smartest person in the room. See, it comes that way. And that's the tricky piece.
Thank you for that reminder.
Right.
And, so where does that come from would then be the next question, right? Like, why was my mom like that? And
Well, yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it now, but I can see all the ways.
Yes. So, and I think that's what people can do. And I'm not expecting people at home, if they can look at their dreams, great, but I'm not expecting people to analyze their dreams. But I think we can certainly all be questioning and just digging in a little deeper and maybe opening that up and going, yeah, well, how would my mother have felt coming out of her childhood? What would she have gone into her adulthood when she starts, figuring out how she's going to form her adult life? And sometimes people are, they know a lot about it, at least emotionally. They'll say, oh, yeah, like you were saying, I always watched my mother not speak up. Now, sometimes that was upsetting because she didn't protect us, but sometimes it was, I felt so bad that she didn't feel she was smart enough. She didn't feel, maybe mom didn't get to go to college, so she always felt like dad had to be smarter, and so she stayed quiet, even though maybe that wasn't true.
Which could go on and on and on generationally.
That's right.
So once you start to see this a little bit and go, oh, I'm being my mom, what does that do for you?
Well, hopefully what it lets you do is not have to be your mom.
Just by beginning to recognize that, you're able to release some of it.
Yes.
And when you release some of it, you can discover bit by bit, let's say, I am not that. I'm going to try using my voice.
Well, that would be it, right? That this takes work. But the first piece is, yes, you start to go, oh my gosh, I think I've been quiet like her. And then you can sort of see what feelings come up around that. And also maybe next time there's an opportunity to chime in, to say something. Cynthia's voice is allowed to be heard, even if mom didn't feel hers was. So yes, we are trying to make what is unconscious and what's been happening conscious so that you can maybe figure out what is you and what isn't. I don't want to say this is an easy task, but I think people are doing this little by little and you're getting more and more curious. At least you're thinking about yourself, and not in a selfish way here. We're doing this because this is so important. If we are all not living as ourselves, and we are living not only not as ourselves, we are living with the limitations of somebody who came before us that tell us how our life can be. We as a group come together and put a city together. We put a family, a school, a business, a city, a state, a country, a world together, all made by people who have limitations set on them and feelings that they're not worthy, not lovable, not good enough, not smart enough. Now, we all have different ones. So some people are going to think they're really smart. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. And some people are going to think, oh, I don't say a word. Stand in the back. And some people are going to think, oh, I'm really lovable. And some think, I can't join the group no matter what. We've got all of this variation. But what we've got is a group, a whole world of people who are not fully being themselves. And then the question is, if I am living out somebody else's life, and it's filled with these limitations, how am I going to build a system that lets us all get what we want in life? We can't build that system because we're all beset with limitations. So I can't really build a system that says, yep, you get everything. It's all abundance. Have what you like. That's not in our psyche. So that's a problem, right? It becomes a limiting factor for the entire world. As an example, what if we just said, money's made up? It's not a real thing. We've found something and we made it money and we gave it value. Now, we could very easily just say, we don't need money anymore. Do you want bread? Are you hungry? Okay, good. You can have bread and we'll build everybody a reasonably nice house and everybody can have, what do you want to do? You want to be an artist? You want to be an accountant? You can have a job And you'd like education. Okay, here, come take a class, and you need health care. Okay, go get health care. It doesn't cost you anything because we could build whatever we want if we're free. But if we inside unconsciously are saddled with limitations, we're going to make a world that is saddled with limitations. Sorry, not enough money, you don't have enough pennies, you cannot get an education. Oh, you're a woman, no class for you. Oh, your foot is about to fall off, but you don't have insurance. I'm so sorry, your foot will have to fall off. We will not treat you. What? That is all built out of limitations. And people who want to pretend they don't have limitations, see, no limitations. I have all the money and I can have everything. Well, not only until we look at your unconscious, you too have an imprint. So we've got people who are at the mercy of a few people who make the rules, who also have imprints and who have decided to make rules that benefit them. They can be king, they can be president, they can be in charge. And everybody else, you have to live by whatever these rules are that are made of limitations. And if we didn't have those, we could simply say, oh, we're going to build a world where we don't have these kinds of limitations. Then what? Everybody can have what they want. Now what?
And then it's just sort of self-sustainable.
Well, it would be whatever it would be, but it would not be a world that is built on imprints. And that's, I think, what Bale wanted most, was just to say, listen, everything we've built comes from us. And if we have an imprint, which is a set of limitations at our base, then anything we make is a representation of that. It will show it. So it's not going to be great for the people because in some way it's going to have to be limiting. So that's why all of this is so important. That's why people looking inside and saying, yeah, where did I get this? Why am I following this rule that I have to be quiet in the corner? Why am I following some rule inside that I'm stupid or that I got just what I deserved? Of course, I don't get good things. So we're questioning. I give this idea that, well, maybe not. Yeah. Maybe not.
I love that. Maybe not.
So what I have done is a couple of these are very simple, and I've also pulled out the salient piece because sometimes you get lots of material in a dream. It may be, it takes 5 minutes for someone to explain it to you. But really, for our purposes, there's, the meat is in the middle. So this is the patient I was talking about. And after we're working for a while, she brings this dream. I'm working with clay, building things like mugs and vases, and then I lay this flat slab of clay that I rolled out over a bowl, and I press it down and shape it to the bowl. And that's the important piece of a long dream where she's telling me about tons of stuff happening in the studio, and this one's talking to this one and that one and all sorts of things in the clay studio. But that was the piece where I went, oh, okay, I see what's happened. I see what she's trying to tell me. Now, I think because I've laid this out, people probably already get where this is going. But I do ask her for her associations because here's what happens. I hear this. My ears go up. I go, oh, okay, I think this is what she's telling me. But I still have to, I want to listen to her. Tell me about your dream. Tell me what comes to mind about your dream and leave it very open.
Because it does need to be what comes to mind from her.
Yes.
Even though you know.
I have a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Right? And I've been doing this a long time. So, a lot of times I have enough experience. Yeah, I know what I'm listening to, but not always. Whether I do or not, if I think I know, then I need her to prove it to me, right? I want to listen to what she says and see if it goes with what I'm thinking. So she tells me this. After I have the shape the way I want it, I can pull it out and basically I have a copy of the bowl. And then I decorate it with some scratch marks and glaze. It doesn't look exactly like the original bowl, but basically it's the same shape and very close in size. So if you think about what I was just explaining, here she has this dream. And basically she says, look, I take a bowl, I roll out clay, so it's like a flat slab. You can imagine this like pie dough, right? And I put the pie into the bowl. And, I decorate it and it hardens and I pull it out and basically I have a copy of the bowl. Well, the bowl is mom and she's the copy. So she's telling me, here's why I fight with everybody. because I'm my mother. All right, well, once we know that, I mean, it's not that, look, sometimes she had very good reasons for having an argument with someone. Fair enough. It wasn't that she was completely out in left field all the time, but she didn't have to have an argument with them all the time. Maybe she could have just had a discussion. Maybe sometimes she needed to just say, what do I
Not
need?
worth
I
it.
don't need to get into this. There's no point.
So she recognized this herself?
She heard the interpretation and had to think about it a little bit. She felt the impact of that.
And she was open to it.
And yes, she was open to it. And wow, this could make life so much easier. What if you don't have to do it the way mom did it anymore? Now, scary because now you have to be yourself. Uncharted territory.
What is that?
We don't know. Even if in this dream she kind of goes, oh, okay, I don't want to be my mom. That sounds great. Maybe I don't have to fight with everybody.
What
I
am
know.
I?
Right. I know, immediately the system's going to go, and she's going to jump back into the bowl. But that's fine. The process started. Now, the process started long before it, because to even get to a dream like this where you lay it out so clearly and just say, hey, come find me. Because that's what she's saying to me. Come find me. Look what I'm doing. I'm making copies. Okay, right? So that's great. So I know a lot of work has been done for somebody to give me that information and be willing to say it, because somewhere unconsciously, she knows I'm going to say to her, you're a copy. Would you like to keep being one, or did you want to change that and be yourself?
Just hearing you say that, it's just such an exquisite interaction, human interaction.
It's beautiful. I mean, to be lucky enough to be part of that with someone, and for the person to trust me enough to have this dream and trust the process enough. This is why I'm doing this. I think it's beautiful. And you can't do that with AI.
Nope. By the way.
So people know, there is a reason. I mean, and what she's struggling with, right? Relationships. I mean, that's what we're all struggling with in some way, shape, or form. And, being loved or not. And you can't do that with AI. Chat can't give you emotionally what communing with the unconscious of another person. Because that's really what we're doing. We're talking, I'm interpreting a dream, but we're also exchanging feelings. You can't do that with a non-human. These are pretty powerful moments, between two people in a treatment.
Beautiful. These are sequential.
There's a little time between them, but generally around the same time, and as all of this is coming up. Another dream, she tells me. There's a big plan, and maybe there are a lot of us involved in it. And it is sort of fuzzy and hard to remember, but there were a lot of us, and we might have been in this empty warehouse. Maybe there were dim lights and some light coming in from outside. And then all of the people are talking and getting more upset about something. And then someone gets up on a box or a ladder and uses a bullhorn and tells us to scrap the plan. And we're just all supposed to act like apes or monkeys. That's the plan now. Act like an ape. And I'm completely confused. It makes no sense. I go through her associations because she says, I don't know what this dream is about, and as we're talking and listening. But the thing that stuck out to me and what I eventually said to her was, this is about your life. You were supposed to scrap the plan for your life and ape or just be your mother. That's it. And that was the announcement. And apparently, I think she was also dreaming for many people, saying there was a whole group of us. And we all get the message loud and clear through a bullhorn. Scrap the plan. It's not going to be about your life. This is now going to be about you living your mother's.
In the dream, once she learned that, she was confused. She was like, wait a minute, why?
Well, it didn't make sense in the dream, right? So the unconscious message of it wasn't clear. That was to be hidden, because just like in the first dream where she's putting the clay in the bowl, that came in the middle of all sorts of things going on, right? So the mind slipped it in. It wants it known, but it also hides it. So we get some of the resistance to the idea as well. We're always going to have resistance, especially to something like this. This is so foundational. Really, this is saying, like, I'm not to be myself. So that's so important.
So there's this unconscious thing going on. It's like a back and forth. Here's this big dream. All these things are going on. There's this little bit in the middle about the bowl. What is the point of that? What is the point of it being just this little snippet? Like maybe you get it, maybe you don't. Is it an internal struggle with I'm too afraid to step out of what I think I am versus my soul saying, here you really are?
Both. And the internal saboteur is saying, like, you're not going to really tell her that and let her find it so easily, are you?
Then what are you going to do?
Well, then we're going to know there's an imprint. And my job as an internal saboteur is to keep you from ever knowing that you took in all of this from your mother. To be fair, so everybody knows, you can get an imprint from your father too. This happens to be about a woman and her mother, but the mother's is so important because it is the first contact with the baby.
That's where we need to survive.
That's where we need to survive. That's where we start. But we do this with all of our caretakers, really. But fathers are usually, next in line. Really, it is this first interaction that is so critical to how we're going to feel our life is allowed to go unconsciously, not consciously, because we may be very hopeful consciously, but unconsciously. What are going to be the limitations? And we really want to pay close attention to where all of the babies start, because if you continue not giving women good access to equality, to whatever it is they need to have fulfilling lives, you will ensure the next generation suffers. Because if I'm not allowed to do whatever it is, get paid the same, study, work, show whatever part of my body I want to show, whatever it is. Anyway, society, the world says, no, you're a woman, you can't. I will carry that. That goes in. Now, then I have a baby, and guess what? Goes into the baby. Mm-hmm. So none of us are doing any favors for anybody, right? Because, the next generation is responsible as we all age for taking care of the one before. Even if you're purely selfish, you don't want to do it. Hopefully you're thinking about what you're doing to the next generation and leaving as a legacy. But however you want to think about it, consider that. Consider that everybody starts in a woman. Now, how do you want to treat that person? Yeah. So one more, and this is interesting. This is another dream around the time that all of this is being discussed, is, up, because things kind of cycle through. Talk about it for a while. It may, and then something else might happen in your life and you focus on that and come back. But she says, I'm walking through a really old house, maybe Victorian, and it is dark and dusty, as though nobody has been inside for a long time. I go upstairs, and sitting on the floor in one of the bedrooms is a plate with some food on it. There's fruit and a piece of white bread with peanut butter on it. I think I hear a noise downstairs, so I run out scared, but there's no one there. There are lots of parts in this. Again, all of these dreams have many layers, and you have to sort of decide in any given session what you're going to interpret. How am I going to best find my patient unconsciously in the material? Where is she? What's going on?
Because a lot of what we dream about seems to be the day-to-day. Couldn't pay for the gas.
Right.
And so that thing could literally show up in your dream.
Yes, it often does. That is called the day residue. What is happening makes its way into your dream. Now, it makes it in, and then the mind does something with it. So it goes, oh, that's a perfect way to symbolically talk about X, Y, and Z, something that's important to me. Because you really could, if you think about it, you go into a dream state, you could dream about anything you want. So if you chose to dream about that, okay, why? Now, yeah, often it's because I just was, at the gas station and my card didn't work and that was frustrating and but then I want to see, now, what do you do with it in the dream? Now, this is a little different in that we've got this old Victorian home, so not quite day residue. That was unknown to her and foreign, and she had thoughts about that. And for ease of understanding, we could simply think about it as old. I think her Victorian was a little nod to psychoanalysis, but but here really was just talking about old. And this is old in her. We've got something very old, dusty, that hasn't been looked at in a long time, right? She said the house is old and it's sort of dark and it looks like nobody's lived here. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got a part of her mind that nobody's lived in for a long time. All right. Or examined or put the flashlight on. And then, but what do we find upstairs? Peanut butter on white bread. Okay. But as we talked about it, what became clear is that, if you've ever had a piece of white bread, it's pretty smushy.
It is.
You put peanut butter on it. Once those two go together, what happens? You cannot peel that peanut butter off. The bread will come off. It becomes
one.
Mm-hmm. And that is what she was talking about. She was really saying, I am one with my mother. I'm clay in a bowl, but I'm even more than that. Now you cannot get us apart. So I know that even though this woman is very brave, she came in, she said, all right, my friends tell me it's me. I'm the problem. And she's doing all these things. Great. And she's also saying, okay, this is going to be sticky because we're one. The extent of this is pretty intense. Okay, we just know it. And what you do is you keep analyzing until you start to see, oh, well, maybe the wrapping was peeling off something. You start analyzing until you get some sign that it's yielding.
And is the fruit in that dream kind of like a decoy?
I think the fruit was the healthy food she needs to understand her unconscious, that she's getting fed in the treatment so that eventually she's going to pull apart.
Fascinating.
But first you have to have, enough nurturance. She has to know it's safe enough. She has to know she's not going to die or be a nothing, be annihilated if she pulls off the bread. She's never known life not on the bread.
So then in future dreams, you did see that coming apart in some form or another, more and more and more.
And the other thing I saw was this: the fighting came way down. She suddenly, every session isn't filled with some other,
can you believe,
insult, right? Something else like, oh, it happened again. Oh, I shot my mouth off again. Oh, that person came at me with this. I had to defend myself. All of that came way down. It doesn't mean it doesn't ever happen. Sure. Occasionally we get it. And what we can say now, oh, well, guess who was there? Your mother was there. You weren't. Or your mother popped in. Sounds like your mom went to the party. And we now have a shorthand way of talking about that, which is really saying, yeah, you still have a lot of your mother. And you remember you were peanut butter and bread. And that is going to take time. But now there is also a part that can see that.
Because it's really ongoing through our lives, isn't it? It's just being able to say, I see it.
Yes.
I see it.
Yeah. We're looking to diminish an imprint as much as possible, or all of the imprints as much as possible. We're not even going, you got to get rid of it completely. Really, I just think that if you can start to see it and get some control over it so that it's not driving you all the time, and you go, yeah, I'm ruining all my relationships because my mother keeps popping out of my mouth. What if I'm able to talk and I don't have to have that fight all the time? That doesn't mean that imprint isn't still there, but you've at least shrunk it enough that there, if you think of that circle, we're now getting the imprint down to here and the rest of the circle. Now we're having this much space for you.
Less
that
of an
might be
outside weight
life-changing.
to carry. So her relationships changed.
Yeah, they change, and her friends are like, oh, you're so much easier to be around. Thank God you don't fight me on everything. Her kids are happier. So yeah, it impacts. That's great for her, right? Her whole life. Great that she doesn't always have to feel like, oh, I just know everybody's going to hate me, so I make it happen. But that was part of the mother's story, and she was just living it out. So she gets to now develop more, ask the questions, who am I? What do I want in my life if I don't have to just be my mother?
Something that we can do outside of your office. And as you said, we could dream about anything at all. And would one start to look at an element like this, the first dream that you brought up with the bowl, and there was all this stuff going on around it. Do you just kind of walk through the dream and think about the various elements and say, how did I feel about that? And why did I have those people in my dream? And this bowl with the clay and the slab, how does that make me feel? What do you just start to find some familiarity with certain elements of the dream in a greater way than other elements in the dream?
You might see what stands out to you.
And might you need to maybe say write down your dreams or remember them and after a few dreams start to see that there's a pocket that gets filled with a similar feeling?
I think all of that is lovely if you can do it, if you have the inclination, absolutely. I would say even more simply, or maybe just as simply, think about yourself. Think about the conversations you're having. Think about the themes. Where do you go? Do you always feel victimized? Do you always say yes and you really wanted to say no? Do you always hold back when somebody asks a question and you say, oh, no, I don't have an opinion on that? Those little things, we can start to first just observe ourselves more, be more mindful about who you are in the world and what it connects to inside. Am I always getting angry with the grocery store because they are so darn slow? Okay, if I'm doing that, where did I learn that? Who did that? Yeah. Maybe you'd say nobody, just me. Okay, then why do you think you do it that way? What is it about that setting? What is it about this situation? And then, yes, you may be able to go to your dreams, but all of this, the trickiest piece I will just let people know is that it's all unconscious. So you may not get a lot initially. That doesn't mean over time getting more familiar with yourself and how you feel and what you do tend to dream about. God, all I have are dreams where I'm, trying to drive off a mountain.
Why is that?
Why is that? That's so interesting. That may be, people go, oh my God, I'm driving off a mountain. I'm trying to kill myself. Maybe not. Maybe you're saying, I'm desperately trying to get off the road I've been on. Yeah. I'll do anything. I'll drive off a mountain. That may be a good thing to see in a dream sometimes. Again, you got to ask the person what's going on in your life. You want a whole person. It's not just a dream in a vacuum. But you may see all kinds of things in your dreams. Obviously, there's an art to sort of putting it all together. People may or may not come to that naturally, but that's okay. You're starting to pay attention to yourself. You're starting to give whatever part hasn't been seen maybe a little light to open up.
So the status quo is the status quo all day long for most of us. We don't question these things that you're suggesting maybe we think about, like, why am I always so frustrated when I check out?
Yeah, or why do I always feel bad about myself? Why am I always depressed after I go to this job? Or, whatever it is.
And do you think that if you think about these things on a conscious level, that it opens a door more to your unconscious so that you, in your dream state, it's like your unconscious is saying, okay, I see that there's a place where this can start to bubble
interested.
up.
Oh, you're interested. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I start having conversation with you, self.
Because part of why we're in the bubble we're in is because it's self-protection. It's all we know. We're protecting.
You're protecting an imprint.
Yes. So if that's our goal, it takes a pretty big step to say, wait a minute, I maybe there's something else.
Yeah, you say, listen, I listen to self. I listen to this podcast. People have imprints. Maybe I have some limitations unconsciously I have no idea about. Let me start thinking about my life, how I feel in it. How do I feel in my life? Do I feel like I am trying as hard as I can? I cannot get ahead. It doesn't matter. I take one step forward, 3 steps back. But that's a story. And I want to see, well, why that story? Did somebody have that experience? If you look around at the family, is that a family experience? Who might have felt that way? And are you carrying it?
And it's actually, I think for all of us, maybe even selfishly, it's fascinating stuff once you start to look at it. Yeah. And And once you start to look at it and you kind of let some puzzle pieces fall into place, or you release the weight of it to some degree, you, I think, can give yourself some extra courage. And it's like, okay, I took this little step. That was fascinating. I didn't fall apart totally. And maybe something broke down a little more over here and got better over here.
Well, and sometimes we need it to fall apart a little. I don't want to scare people, but sometimes, everything's being held so tightly. So because maybe you're not supposed to know too much, that actually a little loosening up is okay. Some feelings coming in about things has to happen.
And then there
change is going to happen.
There are times where you might not recall your dreams at all.
That too.
But this is so great because I think sharing these experiences, these dreams, and again, many, many thanks to your kind patient, is exciting for us as listeners. So we really appreciate all of this fabulous information and knowledge and love that you're sharing with us, and the idea that each of us really can help humanity by, taking steps inside ourselves is, what a gift we each have.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for letting me share this. And I think that's really it, is we all can be so proactive in changing the outside by each one of us working on understanding better our insides. That's what actually will make change outside possible.
I agree 100%. And I think that's the only real path for us. So thank you for keeping the light on it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Please follow, rate, and share this podcast, and pass this episode along to someone who might need it. This is And Now Love. Listen to your dreams. You can tell from this podcast it's a good idea, and live from your heart.